Welcome to another Haxe Examples, and in this episode we are going to cover OpenFL and we're going to show how to get your Haxe projects building and running on iOS. So I was originally going to cover iOS and Android, but because Haxe is in development constantly, OpenFL is in development constantly, and OS X and iOS are in develop constantly, there tends to be bugs around this workflow. So having the latest of everything and working through those problems as they come up is something that you have to do on typically a daily or weekly basis. The developers do a really good job of finding solutions and updating code as often as possible. But for that reason, what we're going to do is discuss using the latest builds of OpenFL and a framework called Lime. And they work together to basically build your Haxe applications into a iOS project and ultimately an iOS application. And then in later videos, we'll show how that actually works on Android as well, and maybe some other targets as we go along. So let's jump right into it. And first, we want to talk a little bit about what OpenFL is and why we want to use it. So what we want to do is we want to use a sort of solution that allows our workflow to be as simple and as fast as possible, so we can get all of the heavy lifting out of the way. When we build our Haxe projects, we want them to be testable immediately, and we don't want to have to worry about the pain of writing a build system in order to create these applications. So OpenFL does that for us, and it also has a familiar Flash API. If you previously have done any ActionScript or Flash development, then this should feel really similar to you as far as the API goes. Also, OpenFL is meant to help do things where Flash previously couldn't go. It goes everywhere that Flash cannot. So you can actually still do Flash development, but OpenFL helps you create apps on mobile, desktop, and for the web very easily. So that's basically what OpenFL is and what it's for. And now let's just jump right into how to get it installed on your system, working with Haxe, and go from there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to navigate over to GitHub, and we want to go to OpenFL/OpenFL. And this is the project that we want and desperately need for this video. So what you want to do is you want to go to this website, you want to clone or download the repository. I'm going to actually clone it. So the easiest way to do this is grab this URL here, and I'm going to hop over to my terminal. And inside of my terminal, I'm going to navigate to my directory. So inside of my libs directory, I have a few things going on in here, and as you can see, I've already got an OpenFL directory in here. So what you're going to actually do is you're going to say git clone and then paste in the address from GitHub like this, and hit enter. I'm actually not going to hit enter since I already have that downloaded. You should be good to go as far as that is concerned once that downloads. And then we're just going to scroll down here and make sure that we have done everything as suggested. So once it has cloned, then you're going to type haxelib dev OpenFL, provided that you're in the same directory as where you downloaded it or used git clone on it. Then you're going to just type in haxelib dev OpenFL and hit enter. And what that is going to do is that is just going to set your development directory inside of haxelib. So whenever you do type haxelib list, you'll notice that you have OpenFL here, and we'll be able to actually use this as a haxelib in our projects. So if you've done that, then you should be good to go. And what you should be able to do now is actually type OpenFL, and you should get a command line prompt that basically verifies that you have OpenFL on your system. If for some reason this does not work for you, then you may need to type in haxlib run OpenFL setup, like that. You shouldn't have to do that, but if you do, go ahead and do that. And what that might actually do is it might install another framework that we need to get called Lime. If it does, then go ahead and let it do that. That's totally fine. But then after you install Lime and you run setup, then you should end up having a command line that you can run. You can just type in OpenFL and you should get the same thing that I just showed you. If that is working correctly, then what I would like for you to do is to type haxlib remove lime, and if lime got installed, then it's going to remove it. And the reason we want to remove it is we want to do the same thing we just did for OpenFL with lime as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to OpenFL's directory on GitHub, and we're going to scroll down here and we're going to find lime, and we're going to go to that page. And we're going to do something similar to what we just did, but we're going to scroll down here. There's actually a different way, or a more particular way that you need to clone the repository for Lime. So what you're going to do is grab this guy here where it's talking about building from source. We're going to copy that, and then we're going to go back to our terminal, and in the same location wherever you are going to have your libs that you're downloading, we're going to clone. We're going to copy that into our terminal window. Let's see, let me grab that again. Copy that, and then we're going to paste that in, and you're going to clone the Lime repository. Once you have done that, then we also need to install format. Once that is installed, then we need to again set our development directory like we did previously. So what we're going to do is we're going to say haxlib dev lime like that, and we should be good there. So after you do that, then what we want to do is we want to tell Lime to rebuild for whatever system you're on. If you're watching this video, then you probably are on a Mac. You need to be on a Mac with Xcode installed as well. If you don't have Xcode, then you need to go download that because it uses the command line tools for Xcode to do all of our compiling for iOS. So go grab that, and then for your system with Lime, what you need to do, I'm assuming you're on a Mac, then you're going to type lime rebuild Mac, and then let that run. It's going to basically build Lime for your system. If you're on Windows or Linux, then you would type the appropriate operating system name there. But you know, like I said, I'm going to assume you're on a Mac because you are wanting to run OpenFL on iOS. So once that is finished running, you should be able to type Lime in your command line, and you should get something like this. Your version might be a little bit newer than mine. I'm not real sure. Just depends on when you're watching this video. But right now we have the latest of both Lime and OpenFL. And what we should be able to do is we should be able to run commands like this. We could say OpenFL test iOS, and nothing's going to happen. It's just going to give me an error because I don't have a project XML. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about setting up your first OpenFL project. So I am going to navigate over to my Haxe. Let's see, my Haxe directory. I'm going to hit ls there. So I do have some things in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up hello OpenFL, but what I'm going to show you how to do is to generate your first OpenFL project so you don't have to set up all of these files by hand. So while you're in here, do a quick little haxlib list, and you need to look for OpenFL samples. If you do not see that in the list, then what you need to do is you need to install OpenFL samples, and you're going to say haxlib install OpenFL samples, and you're going to hit enter. And I've already got them, so it's not going to download them again. But for you, if you don't have them, then it's going to download a bunch of OpenFL sample code. And we need this for this next command to work. So the next command that I want you to type in is OpenFL, and then you're going to say create project and call it hello. What did I call it previously? Let's see, hello OpenFL. So let's scroll back down here, call it hello OpenFL like that, and hit enter. And that should generate a directory with all the files you need in it for starting up your first OpenFL project. So I'm going to get that open next and show you around. All right, so once you have your project open in your favorite text editor, I tend to use atom.io. So if you want to search for that and you don't have it, there is a Haxe extension for that, so you can do a little Googling and install that as well. Anyway, you don't have to use this, but I highly recommend it. It's a pretty good text editor. Anyway, once you open your project, you should see something similar to what I have on my screen right now. It may look a little bit different. You probably have an import statement up here, and you probably have something like extends sprite right here. You want to get rid of that. So let's get rid of that, and then I'm actually going to paste in some code, and it's going to look like a lot of code, but I will supply the resources for this as a zip file that you can download if you like, but I would just highly recommend pausing the video and typing in everything that you see. It'll help you get used to the syntax, and there's not a whole lot of code. It won't take you too long, so I highly recommend typing it in, but I will provide the source code for this if you want to just get up and running pretty quickly. So what I have pasted in here is some references to a library that we need to install called StableXUI. And this is just going to give us a set of components, things that we can use to build applications with that are going to be cross-platform UI components. And this is just a really quick and dirty example of how to use StableUI or StableXUI. And I'm not going to do anything pretty. It's just a little more than a basic Hello World application, but just to show that we can get this running on iOS pretty easily. So one thing you need to do is you need to go back to your terminal and you need to type in haxlib install StableXUI, and I probably already have it. Actually, I don't, because I think I have a development version of it. Cool, yeah, so you probably installed StableXUI version 1.2.0. Go ahead and remove that, and I will show you how I installed it. So to install StableXUI, what you want to do is grab this address here, and then we want to go back to our terminal, and we're going to say haxlib get, and we're going to call it StableXUI, and then we're going to paste in the Git repo address, and you're going to hit enter. And what that's going to do is pull down StableXUI from Git. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to make sure that that we have the latest version, because the guy that develops that tends to update things when they break, and that'll give us the latest and greatest version and make sure everything's working as smoothly as possible. I do highly encourage you, if you do run into some errors with the UI framework itself, then please go to the Git repo and go to the issues section and report these issues. He's really good to respond and can help out quite a bit. So anyway, now that we have StableXUI, we want to go back to our project. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you've entered in all of this code. I'm going to encourage you to pause the video right now. And then once you've gotten that part of it typed into your command, into your text editor, then what you want to do is pause the video again and finish up. And now what we want to do is we want to go to the project.xml file, and we want to make sure that you have these three Haxe libs basically defined inside of your project.xml. And this is going to tell OpenFL what Haxe libs you're using whenever it compiles your projects. So make sure that yours looks exactly like mine. And then also I would encourage you to make sure that your assets directory definitions are the same as mine, because we are actually going to be using some fonts, because StableXUI needs to embed those fonts and include them into our iOS project. Otherwise, none of the text will render, because the iOS application will not have access to those fonts whenever we build it unless we include them. So make sure these things are done. And then on top of that, the other thing you should do if you are not going to download my source code is you're going to go to your assets directory and create a fonts directory. And then you need to download Open Sans from Google Fonts. So really quickly, what you can do is just go to Google Fonts Open Sans. And we're gonna click this guy, and you should end up on the Open Sans section, and you can select this font and then open this guy right here, and you can click the download button. You'll get a zip file of all of the Open Sans fonts, and what you want to do is copy them into your fonts directory, and then you should be good to go, because what we're doing is we are using Open Sans regular here and here, and we're also telling our text field to embed the fonts. If you don't embed the fonts and you don't set the font to Open Sans regular on both of these UI objects, then nothing is going to render in your application. So real quick, before we actually build and launch in the simulator, there's one other thing you need to set up that I come across whenever Xcode did some updates that is required for getting the compiler and the build system to work properly with OpenFL, and that is you need an environment variable set up to tell OpenFL the latest simulator version to actually build for, and it uses that to actually build for the proper iOS SDK. So what you're going to do is go into terminal, and you need to open up your bash _ profile file. So I can do that by typing atom and then going to the user directory like this and typing bash _ profile and launching that inside of Atom. And all you need is, you've probably got a bunch of other stuff in here, but at the very bottom you need to set up this environment variable here. So you're going to type export and then in all uppercase letters iPhone _ ver equals, and right now the current version is 10.1. and how do you know what version to put in here is you'll open up Xcode. So let me show you. I'm going to open up Xcode, and if you go to the Xcode drop down and you go to Open Developer Tools and launch the simulator, So the simulator at the top should say what version is currently running of iOS. So right now we're running 10.1 as of today. So if you have an earlier version, then that's totally fine. If you have a later version, then that's totally fine. But I believe things will break and not compile for you properly unless you set up that environment variable. So you need to make sure that you do that before you try running the command for building and launching in the simulator. So one thing you need to do real quick after you save your bash profile and you add that new environment variable is you need to source it in the terminal if you're still in an open terminal window that you're going to run your OpenFL commands from. So I'm going to go back to Atom where I'm going to run my OpenFL commands, and since I have a terminal open here, and I'm going to source that change that we just made by typing source, and then we're going to say .bash profile, just like that, and that is going to pick up the new environment variable that we put in that file, and we should be good to go. Now all we are left with is to compile and build our application and open it in Xcode. So at the time of this recording, iOS 10 has come out, and also Xcode 8.1 has come out. I don't think there's too much difference between 7 and 8 as far as Xcode is concerned. I do know that those builds did break some things with OpenFL and how OpenFL needs to build things. So I'm going to go over what you need to do in order for this to work properly now. So what we're going to do is I'm using a terminal that's inside of my Atom text editor, but feel free to either install the terminal because it is an extension of Atom that you'll have to install, or you can just switch back to your terminal window and make sure you're in the Hello OpenFL directory before you run any of these commands. So what I want you to notice before we run the command is we have an export directory, and this directory is where OpenFL is going to put all of the builds. If you notice right here, we have this in our project.xml. We tell it to start with the main file, and we're telling it to export it into the exports directory whenever we build anything. So inside of OpenFL, what you can do is you can type the following command, and this is a little bit long, but you can pause the video and type this out. But what you're wanting to say OpenFL test iOS dash simulator is your first argument. And before things were broke, all you had to do was type in dash simulator and it would launch the iOS simulator. Now there's a couple of problems with the way Xcode requires some things before it can build your application. So we need to set the headers of the application as it builds. So the argument for doing that is just going to be dash uppercase D source dash header equals Haxe. And then we need to force Xcode when it builds this project to sign the application. So we need to give it this dash sign, and we also need to give it this dash force. Now what you might find is when you hit enter, it's going to take it quite a while to build the first time. So it may take up to I've had it take up to like 5 minutes sometimes, depending on how fast your system is. And I'm running like the latest MacBook Pro at the time of this. So it does take it a little bit of time the first time. After that, the build shouldn't take quite as long. But the other thing is I've noticed a little bit of quirkiness with what simulator it needs to launch, and mine has been launching the iOS 6, the iPhone 6 simulator. If you have iPhone 7 or anything above that and you want to test on those simulators, then you will have to manually switch to those simulators after you build for the first time. So I'm going to pause this while it's building, and then we should come back to seeing a simulator launched on the screen, and then we'll talk a little bit more of how to actually test our applications from Xcode if we need to test different simulators and things of that nature. All right, so if your build was successful, you should see something very similar to what I have on my screen, which is just an iPhone 6 simulator and the text with hello from OpenFL and a button that says hello with an exclamation point. This button actually would execute a touch event if you had a touch event listener added to it. So I would encourage you to have a look at the StableXUI documentation and do a little bit of, play around a little bit with it. See if you can actually create a button click listener and get it to do something within this very simple application. Maybe just have it change the text value above to something else whenever you click on the button. That should be something relatively easy to figure out, and then just rebuild your application and see if it works. If you ran into any errors and it didn't build the first time and launch the simulator, make note of what kind of error messages you might have gotten down here in the terminal and copy those, and please do some searching online. There is a OpenFL website with go to the community section, and there's some forums there. You could actually post in the forums what your problem is, or search for the error message that you're getting, and there may already be a solution there. Like I said, to get things working for this video, I had to figure out all of these arguments that I needed to add, because originally all you had to type was the OpenFL test iOS and with the simulator argument, and it would launch just fine. But as Xcode has changed and they're requiring more and more arguments to be passed from Xcode to the to the compiler, we had to figure out what else needed to be passed along. But any new errors, report them to the OpenFL community, especially on GitHub, and they're really good about actually finding solutions for that and updating the code. And that was the whole reason for pulling down the Git repo version of it. One other thing that I did say that I would talk about is, how do I test this code from Xcode itself? So one really quick thing that I want to go over before we sign off is, instead of typing OpenFL test iOS, you can actually put in OpenFL update, and instead of the simulator argument, you can actually give it a -Xcode argument like that, and it will launch Xcode for you, and it'll create the project and launch Xcode for you. But since you were successful in building the iOS version and launching the simulator, if you go look in your exports directory, you can actually go into the release, and you notice it created a Xcode project for you. So if you were to reveal that in the Finder, you could go in here and actually launch the Xcode project by double clicking on it, and that's going to open up Xcode for us. And as you can see, OpenFL has created all of the source files for a, basically it's a C++ project. It's an Objective C++ project in theory. So you could actually go in here and change some of the code. You can go into your build settings and set things up for deploying to the iOS or the App Store. Essentially, you can go in here and change things. And that's what the update argument with OpenFL will actually do. If you go in and make Xcode changes, then I think this does a very good job of not overriding some of your changes, but sometimes it does. So just be real careful how you use that. But that's how you could go in and tweak things when you are finished with development and you're ready to create a deployable version of your app to the App Store. So I hope you enjoyed this video on getting started with OpenFL in Haxe, and please let me know if you have any questions or you run into any issues. You can always hit me up on Twitter, and also interact with the community on the OpenFL website, and we look forward to seeing you in the next Haxe Examples video.